Welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series, novels, and films. For this episode, Disney gives us another look at a character we perhaps mistook for nothing but a notorious crook. But is it all just gobbledygook? That's right, we're talking about the Book of Boba Fett. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Stephen Ford, joined as always by Andrew Knuckles.
Hello.
And Joel Killingsworth. Don't knock that over.
Hello.
As Stephen was talking, Joel almost knocked over one of our temporary quotation marks.
Fabulous soundproofing solution.
I'm just doing my part, guys. I'm just here doing my part.
Yep. Trying to destroy everything that we have created.
All right. Well, before we destroy everything we have created, speaking of which, that's actually very topical to the show. But before
that was not intended, despite being on Spoilers Intended.
Oh, but anyways, before we get into the Book of Boba Fett, there was a scene from a specific episode that many of you might remember if you've already seen it. If you haven't, you will remember it once you've seen it. So it has led us
for good or worse,
for better or worse. It has led us to look at chase scenes. So some of our favorite chase scenes, not necessarily just car. Obviously, the scene in question here, Star Wars, is not cars chasing each other.
Yeah.
But chase scenes from other films, maybe Star Wars, maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
So we all kind of picked and chose our selections, and I'm going to give it to Joel first.
All right. So I'm bringing a chase scene from a heist film, The Italian Job, specifically the remake with Mark Wahlberg.
Right.
And
some minis.
I thought it was Jason Statham.
No, that wasn't an
No.
Italian Job.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so this particular chase scene is
He's an Italian Job, isn't he?
Statham. Wait, no, yeah, Jason Statham is an Italian Job.
He's not the main character. Yeah, he's in. He's in.
He's in it. He's the
not
driver.
the main character.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, I know that he's
Boy,
in
yeah, I had a moment where like my mind split. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I thought for a second you were confusing it with Transporter, but no, yeah, he's in there.
Okay,
He's
yeah.
in it,
And Michael Caine's actually in it. In the new one too, or the remake, just as a character in it, even though he was the main guy in the last one.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Fun
Anyway,
facts.
sorry.
Anyways,
I took it from you.
Anyway, so the whole film revolves around a heist, and part of our daring thieves' plan is to load the gold that they're trying to steal into the back of these three multicolored Mini Coopers.
Like a terrible choice of transport for very heavy objects. Just being honest.
But going through like inside buildings and taking, high speed approaches to really tiny confined areas is the plan that they have. And of course, as all good heist films go, the plan doesn't quite go
as planned.
And so they have to take to the sewers and they get chased by motorcycles and this and that. And it's a really fun scene, particularly because with the vehicles being so small, they get to do a lot of interesting things that you don't normally get with like the high powered motor vehicles that you normally see in chase scenes. And so it's also a lot of fun to contrast it to the original because the original is like a 20 or 30-minute chase scene where no vehicle exceeds the speed of 40 miles an hour at any point.
Very topical to Book of Boba Fett.
I mean, to be fair, the technology of filming larger chase scenes was relatively
but you don't
lower.
have to make it half an hour.
They put the work in. By God, you're going to enjoy it.
I mean, hey, you have to have that runtime.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So that's a good. That was Italian Job was in my considerations for this. So
which I find so interesting. Like I like the Italian Job. I've seen both films multiple times. They're good films. I just never really. I guess I never really got the excitement out of like seeing just a bunch of Mini Coopers driving around in circular super tunnels.
It's different, right? Like it's a unique spin on a classic chase.
Yeah, that's what got me for it, was just unique in that way.
Yeah.
So on that note, I'm going to take over because
Sure.
we're going to seg into something else unique. So I had an original choice here, was going to be the car chase from Bourne Identity.
The first
movie. Because again, it's a small car, kind of weird, blah blah blah. And then the more
They're in
I thought,
Fiat, aren't they?
I believe so. But
Yeah?
it's very Euro,
Mhm.
small car, small roads, all this other. But that's not what I chose. Because as I thought about it, I decided I keep going for unique for small cars, and that's not what I want. So what I chose was the tank chase scene from GoldenEye.
Oh man,
Because
that is a fantastic
talk about
chase
taking
scene.
a classic car chase scene and flipping on its head of the issue isn't that you can't outrun them. The issue is that he can take the corners you're not allowed to take, the forbidden tunnels
Mhm.
Mhm.
and everything else. It's such a quintessential Bond moment for me, just
Mhm.
because while I grew up seeing, Connery and Moore,
Mhm.
Pierce Brosnan was really the Bond of my era, right? GoldenEye
Yeah.
was kind of the defining
Well, it came out
video
in
game for all of us.
1996, which you're almost like 15, 16 at this point, I think.
Oh gosh, don't make me that old. I'm like 13.
Yeah, 13.
Yeah.
Because I was 12. No,
Okay.
I was 10. I was 10. Excuse me. Whenever it
Get
came
your
out.
numbers right.
Yeah.
Do the math.
I forgot I was born in 1986, 1984.
Wow. Anyways, but yeah. So
I was
Well,
7.
but
Youngins.
so like that tank scene, I honestly didn't even. It wouldn't have beat out what my choice
first choice was.
but I didn't even think about that. But thinking about it, like that is kind of one of the more iconic James Bond chase scenes that they've ever done. Period.
Yeah, like all I could when I pulled up the other choice I had just to look at it, just to kind of confirm that it was what I remembered it being.
Mm-hmm.
They have that moment where he looks out the back window, and all I can see is the colonel looking back at the tank and just drinking from the flask because it's like, what else could I do? Because there's only so much faster we can go.
Yep.
But it has so many great Bond moments of like, use the bumper. That's what it's for. Just stuff like that. And then, Bond just plowing through and over and whatnot, everything.
Yeah. Well, whenever he bursts through, I think like the corner of this whole building, and then like all the bricks and stuff are falling, and he pops out of the thing and he straightens his tie.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's very Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah. Well, and you shared a video with me that was kind of like the making of the behind the scenes of it, and like them timing, because
they can only do it once.
Yeah, the tank actually burst through that wall at the start.
Mhm.
So they had to time, because tanks don't accelerate very fast, especially not older tanks.
Like Soviet era tanks.
Well, I mean, it was like a T-70 or T-72. It's not like a young tank.
Well, they had to model it or add more stuff to it to make it look like a Soviet era tank of the Cold War.
Right. Yeah, it was not even that. Yeah. So they had to time the run up for how long it takes it to accelerate up to this speed to bust through this wall with when the cop car or the police car makes that turn that has his prize in it.
And not too soon to where you just kill
the people driving the car, because it is, at the end of the day, it's still a tank breaking through a wall. Yeah, so it's a really fascinating video. We'll have to find that.
Yeah, we can probably post it on the page, because it's honestly fantastic. Like, it's a really good breakdown of it, and it's the director the cinematic director at the time kind of talking
and
about.
Also like the stunt coordinator.
Yeah.
It's so. But yeah, that whole scene is just so good.
Yeah.
So anyways, on that note, I'm gonna hand it off to Andrew.
Okay, so I also kind of like stunt related things. I chose it's kind of like a half and half car chase and on foot chase from Police Story, 1985, Jackie Chan.
All right, yeah, classic,
and probably one of my all time favorite films. Period. I love martial arts, and Jackie Chan is just kind of like right up there for one of the best. But
definitely.
This one is just so fantastic. So it happens at the beginning of the film, where basically a bust for the police goes wrong, and the mob boss and his goons are trying to escape. And they initially get into some cars, and they start driving through basically this hillside shanty town. And Jackie Chan, being the zealous police officer that he is, he gets in his car and he chases them also down the shanty town, like going through like the buildings and everything. And of course, it's the 80s, so there's explosions and stuff happening behind them as they're going down. They both get out of their cars. Then the bad guys go and hijack a bus. And then he has to go chase down this bus. And of course, he finds an umbrella from passerby that's just like looking at this happening.
Yeah.
And he takes the umbrella and he runs up behind the bus and hooks it to the back of the bus. And now this is all happening like all the stunts are real, and he's doing all of this himself. And he is now hanging from the back of this bus with the umbrella, sliding on the ground, trying to like push himself up onto the bus, and then he ends up like fighting the guys through the windows while the bus is still moving. He gets knocked off the bus. Then he runs down this really big hill to get in front of the bus to try and stop it.
Mhm.
And then it ends with the bus basically stopping like maybe 3 or 4 feet in front of him, with 2 of the bad guys basically falling out of the double deck of the bus onto the asphalt right next to him.
Mhm.
And he ends up capturing the guy, and that's like pretty much the whole like first sequence of the film. And it sets the pace for the whole movie, but it's just fantastic. The fun part is that Michael Bay chose to almost exactly copy that scene where they're going down the shantytown in Bad Boys 2, whenever they're in Cuba, I think.
Mhm.
And they're basically chasing the bad guy through essentially the exact same thing, with just explosions and.
Good artists imitate, great artists steal.
Oh, don't
I don't know if I really want to call Michael Bay a great artist, but so it goes.
Oh God, don't even do that.
All downhill from here.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, I mean that's pretty good. I think it's kind of interesting too, because Joel's chase is kind of the climax, the end of the story.
Mhm. Yeah.
My chase is dead center, and yours starts. So that's
Right at
actually
the
also an
beginning, yeah.
interesting. We if we thought about it, we could have done that in a better order. Oh well.
Well, no, because we go into these essentially blind, so we can have
Live
live
discussion.
discussion.
Yeah, so
about
we haven't
it.
already been sitting here talking about it the whole time.
Like we have been with Book of Boba Fett.
Oh no. Anyways, yeah, on that note, let's get into a little bit of the Book of Boba Fett. I believe this is the segment of the show where I hand it off to Joel and everything becomes Joel's problem. So you want to give us a little synopsis?
Yeah. So a bad synopsis.
No, just a synopsis. That's enough for this one.
Just
It's
a
bad by
synopsis.
default.
So in this is by definition going to have some spoilers for the Mandalorian show, because Boba Fett shows up in that show, and that's where he kind of has his jumping off point into this spin-off series.
Right. At the end of Mandalorian season 2 sets up Book of Boba Fett.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
So there's no escaping that. There's going to be some minor spoilers for season 2 of The Mandalorian. So we start with Boba having ousted Bib Fortuna, who had apparently taken over for Jabba the Hutt after Jabba was killed in Return of the Jedi.
Oh, it's
So
a huge spoiler.
Spoilers
from
for the opening gambit.
1980s,
Yeah. And so he has set himself up as running the underworld, the section of the underworld that Jabba had previously laid claim to at some point in the past. We are multiple years in the future. It is unclear how many years from the show itself. So we have 2 parallel storylines where we have showing how Boba escaped the Sarlacc from where we last saw him in the movies,
Return of the Jedi, yeah.
up to getting to the point where he hooks up with the Mandalorian, more or less. And then we have
Oh my.
then we have thank you. Now it's a bad synopsis. And then we have the other storyline, which is the current timeline, where he is attempting to deal with the local problems and get all of the different elements of the underworld in line under him as their leader.
Right. Kind of the realities of inheriting Jabba's position.
Right.
And kind of what was left over and how well he can handle the responsibilities, et cetera,
Yeah.
meet the expectations.
Antics ensue.
Hijinks. is the word you're
Hijinks,
looking for.
antics. It's all the same.
Actually, I don't know if this one deserves hijinks. Antics will do.
Antics, yeah.
Antics will do.
So
On that note,
On that note, we gave it a 4.5 out of 10.
so for those of you keeping score,
which
at
is a
home,
new record.
that is a new record for the lowest rated score on Spoilers Intended of any across any media.
That we have yet to review. And this was due to a variety of problems. There is, first
A
and
wide
foremost,
variety.
what you're hit with is, for whatever reason, the quality of the action on the Star Wars TV shows that have been released on Disney Plus has been a stark step down from the action that we've seen from Disney in the Star Wars films.
Right.
And this is not something that is generally paralleled in their Marvel properties. Like the Marvel TV shows, the action seems to be on the same quality
Mhm.
as the films. And so it's kind of mystifying why we see a Stark like this is a low budget TV that just happens to have some good graphics
That has
as
the
a
Star Wars logo at the start.
yeah, like, and so like that is front and center up front. The sets are not filled out with enough extras. The action sequences themselves are poorly choreographed and poorly shot so that they seem really slow. And so like all of that just right up in your face
Mm-hmm.
is the first thing.
So one of the whenever we watched the first episode, I kind of like asked Holly, I was like, "Are we watching like 1960s Star Trek?"
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, there are some fight scenes that are. I don't think we never got the double fisted. Oh wait, did we get the double fisted overhand? Did Boba do that something? In the...
No, I don't think so.
No, he did. He did it to the Tuscan dog.
Well, I don't. Anyways,
we'll get into
but
that later.
it was definitely what I felt was a very large step back from what we kind of came to expect, at least with the Mandalorian season 1 and 2, which like you said, it definitely had a lower tier action, but it's also smaller scale action too. So you can't necessarily knock it completely for being slower and smaller.
You can totally. So I was actually going to make the argument the opposite direction, that just because the scale comes down, it's not that, oh, well, it's not, we're not fighting a Death Star, so it just doesn't have the same. It's just not well put together. The fight choreography and the shooting choreography within the fights. And we can make the argument of, oh, they shoot it to where it feels slow or not. And that can be an issue with live action where, we've discussed this before with how animation can cheat. You can cheat in live action. It's called jump cuts. And a lot of people will pan it, but there is some degree that needs to probably be there sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's not well thought out. The people who are doing this just don't seem to really put a lot of thought. There's never a moment where everyone sits down and looks at it and says, well, yeah, but what if he just did this or just did that? And everyone goes, oh, yeah, he would just do that. Like, none of that seems to ever occur to any one of these fight sequences.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the big scale Star Wars fight sequences, the fights are always happening out of a necessity. So like the decisions that are made in it have to happen that way, or else it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I think that's just very glaring. And the Mando gets away with it a little more, but in Boba Fett, it's really glaring.
Yeah. So probably my biggest gripe with the show in general, and I'm not going to get into specific like plot elements that really knocked it down for me, but the bigger part was, do we really care about why Boba Fett wants to essentially be a quotation marks crime lord instead of a bounty hunter, which is what we've historically known him as?
I would like to care. I would like for them to give me the option to care.
Yeah. So the thing is, there was never any reason given.
Boba Fett needed a want song.
You have to get to episode 3.
No, episode 4.
Episode 4 before there's any real dialogue that supports the character's new direction.
Yeah. And up until that point, like, you can kind of see him quotation marks changing, but unfortunately there's no other information before that we have that would indicate that he was ever actually a bad guy outside of the like. I haven't seen Clone Wars. I'm probably never watch Clone Wars. Sorry, it's just not my thing. But, so like I'm looking at it from the perspective of, I've seen the original trilogy films, I've seen all the other movies, I've seen Mandalorian season 1 and 2, and then I've watched this.
Yeah. And that's another knock on it too, is that this is absolutely, you have to have seen The Mandalorian. You have to already be invested in Boba as a character. Otherwise, it completely falls flat. Like, the show does not give you enough information about the character for you to look at that, knowing nothing else, and say, okay, I accept the starting premises and now am prepared to care about this character. Yeah. Like, they just don't give you that opportunity. It is written completely from the point of view of, you love Boba Fett, right? Well, here's a story.
Yeah.
And if you're highly invested in Boba Fett, as we've seen from some fandom backlash, it may not really sit very well with you, the story that you get.
Well, and I'll also add too, like, I like Star Wars as much as the next guy. I grew up with it. It's just always kind of been part of my life. But going into any of these films, even like the new sequel films, whenever they came out, I had zero expectations going in whenever I watched them. Like whatever they did with the story, I don't really care. It never bothered me. Only thing I really care about is that when it's like the way it's written and if it makes sense for the characters in the moment. And unfortunately, like this one just didn't really do that at all.
Yeah, it needs to maintain some kind of logical consistency.
Yeah.
Which, again, giving Boba Fett strong motivations that the audience know and see and can understand and can relate to. That in itself, that is a critical core part of storytelling. And it just, if for the amount that it happens, it doesn't happen fast enough. And what we get probably isn't really enough at the end of the day.
Yeah. And
without going deep into specifics.
Yeah.
That's just a kind of a core failure, not just for this show, but just the storytelling in general it's just not there.
Well, that's the thing is like, if you want to make Boba Fett a good guy or a bad guy or whatever, go for it. I'm all here for it. Like, I want to see the story of how he becomes whoever he's going to end up being.
Take me on that journey.
Yeah.
Show me how it happens, but don't just take me along and I'm just kind of, oh, okay.
Now, on the flip side, to say something nice, if there are a lot of still images in there, like if you pause it and you took a screenshot that look great,
it's very pretty.
Boba Fett's armor looks fantastic.
Yeah, his new look is very cool. I like
it. Yeah, because he's kind of got a little more of a robe thing going on under the armor, so that's really cool.
Which I do like that they kind of tied that into part of the story,
right?
Yes, they did do a little bit there, and they did a good job with some of the pieces within it. There's some specific flying sequences that I enjoyed a lot.
Yeah, there are a couple of character cameos that are really nice. A couple of character cameos that feel sort of ham-fisted, but some others that are really nice.
¿Por qué no los dos? All one and the same.
Yeah.
But yes, you may have heard some of that on internet rumblings and trying desperately to avoid spoilers.
Yeah,
we won't.
Well, it's if you are probably listening to this episode, but whenever it comes out, you've probably already been spoiled by everything that happens. But we're not going to do that for you
yet.
Well, it looks like we've arrived at the intermission.
What? Yeah. What?
I have it written down that I'm doing Book of Boba Fett intermission, and I crossed it out, but I just read the part that I crossed out.
Like, I'm getting prepared, and Joel just leaps in here.
I kind of want to just leave this in.
It's mine. It's mine. You took it from me.
Don't leave this in here.
I don't know. I kind of want to.
Oh, I hate you.
We're professionals. We're totally professional.
Yeah,
Totally.
super professional. Anyways, on that note, as we enter the intermission, if you're as tired of Tatooine as we are, we understand. If you like what you've heard so far, you can help us stay moisturized by supporting the show at patreon.com/spoilersintendedpodcast. If you're prepared to dig through the sand with us, though, welcome to the tribe. Alrighty, everyone, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that little intermission from the Boba bashing, because we about to dig on back into that Sarlacc.
Like we're trying to find these little water bulbs inside the sand that you can just kind of decide to dig wherever and they just exist.
You know what? At this point, I had totally wiped that
You're welcome.
inanity out of my mind. I really didn't need it back. Oh boy. Okay, well, we're going to kick this off. First category up for grabs, spectacle. So this is the impact of what you're watching, right? How well is it?
The wow factor.
Yeah, there's a wow factor.
How is the CGI? Like, how was the fight scenes? How did it look?
Spoilers, it's not off to a great start. So, speaking of not off to a great start, I'm going to let Andrew go first on this one.
I'm pretty sure we all had basically the exact same score here for spectacle, but I gave it a 5. Pretty much right down the middle, but not in a good way. There is, I honestly don't really know where to start. So I'm just going to just kind of say it. I felt like a lot of the action set pieces that existed outside of the train scene, which was really good, or I liked it.
It's a train heist.
And a couple other spare scenes. I'm kind of like ignoring episodes 5 and 6 because those are, I feel like, a completely different kind of show.
I mean, it was a meanwhile in another movie.
Yeah,
like that.
So that was really abrupt too.
Yeah, so like the train sequence was pretty cool, and then whenever he was waxing the Nikto gang with the slave one, that looked pretty
was
cool.
Really nice. Yeah.
No, that's actually, I ding it for that.
Really?
What? Why?
Because
that was the only use of tactical air superiority that was appropriately applied in the entire show.
Yes. and was it cool? Was the idea of like, oh, the fire spray swooping in and just blowing up the speeder getting cool, right?
Yeah.
There's like 30 of you people on speeders, scatter. They all just sat in a clump.
Well, no, they didn't know
it
was coming.
They don't, but when the first 3 people next to you blow up, you don't just drive straight.
Well, no, I mean, but you're just like, oh, they just blew up. I need to keep going. That could have been a mine. I don't know.
If it's a mine, you don't keep going. You stop. You're in a minefield. No, it's just.
But I felt that a lot of the smaller scale action set pieces, especially the first couple episodes, really felt like it was a parody instead of an actual like action. Now, I do have something to back this up. Robert Rodriguez, which was the director of 1, 2, 3, I think 4 and 7.
Oh, really?
Yes,
yeah, he did 7.
Okay.
He also is the one that is responsible for every Spy Kids movie.
There's a definite styling that's suggested there.
Yes.
So what's interesting is he's done a lot of other stuff.
He has?
Yes. From Dusk Till Dawn is him.
Never heard of it.
Never. Wait, really? Are you being sarcastic with me?
No, of course I'm being sarcastic.
Okay, what to say? Like the thing is, he's done a lot of other stuff, but most of it is very small scale, even smaller scale than this is. And there is some element of camp. Dusk Till Dawn definitely has an element of camp to it.
Yeah.
So just pinning like Spy Kids and saying, oh, it's just Spy Kids for Star Wars or something. Not quite.
No,
but
I definitely wasn't saying that. I'm just saying that he, like, if you want to know the filmography of the guy that is responsible for the first couple episodes of the show, which then somehow change into 2 completely different episodes and then go right back to where we were.
Yeah.
Then that is why, like that, there is some history there of this kind of style of directing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna kick it over to Joel.
All right.
Because you're not going to steal any of my points. So I'm saying
I also gave Spectacle a 5 out of 10.
Consistency.
So not terribly impressed, though there were some high points, which for me, like the, slave one coming through, I thought it was a high point.
Well, no. The initial scene, like where you have that low camera angle, you can see the spirit and you can see him swooping out of the suns, I guess, but out of the light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that feels good. You boys are in trouble.
And like the entire sequence where Din Djarin, which is like, man, if we have to go over to the meanwhile in another movie sequences to say good things about the show, it just makes me really sad.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I didn't bring up any of those episodes, because those episodes were completely different.
They weren't part of. They shouldn't have been part of this show at all.
We'll get to that for
but,
plot.
I mean, they weren't part of it essentially.
But anyway, like the whole sequences where he's test flying the modified in-1 starfighter are just
fantastic.
I lied. Y'all did steal my good point. Yeah. No, the camera scenes, the low down camera scenes of him in the cockpit are just, that is Top Gun. Like when he like rotates and you can see, the sky into the sand. It's, oh gosh, that's so what. Please give me more of that.
I also want to add in the fight scene at the beginning of episode 5, whenever he's in like the meat factory or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's fighting and it's a really cool fight. And then finally someone did it. They finally cut themselves with their own saber.
Because
because that is what would happen.
Because he doesn't have any training with this kind of weapon. And that was really great. But back to the negatives. But let's not get too positive here. The mod gang, right?
Oh,
so
episode 3, no.
Their entire I'm not going to say their entire existence. From a concept, I think they're pretty cool. People whose identity as a group is they spend their available cash on droid upgrades for for their bodies.
Yeah.
Prosthesis.
Cool concept.
It's a cool concept.
That's definitely something within the Star Wars universe that would make sense, right? I mean, this kind of ability to mod yourself definitely exists, and there would absolutely be some kind of subculture around. Like, it just that's one of the most natural feeling evolutions within Star Wars, probably, that we've really seen in it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a shame that the actual execution of it isn't
Right.
super
Yeah. Like
great.
visually, it was. They had really bright, multicolored scooters for speeders. That there is no way in the world that if you are scraping together credits just to buy water, that you would be able to spend enough on washing and waxing and weather sealing these speeders constantly against sand erosion.
Okay, well, I'm gonna
sun
kind
bleaching.
of
Yeah, it has two
I'm gonna
suns.
put a pause right there. So teenagers are not very
Efficient with their
efficient
money.
with
Okay,
their money.
all right. But
And
look at their clothing too.
well,
The
but
clothing was exactly the same.
no, but see, that's the thing though, is
What he's saying
what I'm
is
saying
that
is
they're
is-
making poor financial choices.
yeah, they're making poor financial choices
Where are
because
they?
they're-
Okay, but they already spent a lot on body modifications too. Where are they getting? They have to be independently
they're
wealthy.
going
No,
to
they're-
a chop shop for those body
Yeah.
modifications.
No, I mean, like this is very similar to just like any kind of teenage culture.
Well, see, so okay, so I'm gonna carry on with this because it also sticks out badly. The issue isn't, oh, they can't afford to maintain it to this level. There is no level of monetary expenditure that keeps it that clean just driving up and down the street in Tatooine. You know why? Because it's all dirt, it's all dust, it's all sand. Going from point A to point B, you have to wash it. Point B to point C, you have to wash it again. Point C, point D, you're home.
Well,
Congrats, it's another washing. Like, you can't physically afford to do this.
So again, I'm playing the devil here. It could be that, in Star Wars they have some kind of wax that helps repel dirt.
And they're the first people who have ever afforded it on Tatooine.
Yeah, they from dialogue later in the show, we know that they are native to Tatooine, right?
Mhm.
Like, it's not like these are
Coruscanters.
interplanet kids
slumming off-worlders.
right?
Yeah.
Like, and that would have sort of made sense. I mean,
Well,
it's still
and
kind of
it-
improbable they could maintain that condition.
Bunch
but
of outcast kids
Yeah,
from
yeah,
Corellian families.
But that is not the situation. They are from here, and they look nothing like anyone else who is here in any way whatsoever.
Honestly, the only thing that really bothered me outside of just the multicolored cars, and I understand that if you go to Coruscant, like even in Attack of the Clones, I mean, there's tons of multicolored
Yeah,
ships and everything
yeah.
like that. That's totally fine.
Or
No
like
big deal.
Corellia. Perfect. Fine.
Yeah.
Works. Yeah. No big deal.
Honestly, the only thing that really got me was the main girl leader. She just looks like she's from 1970s London. And
And that's what they were based on, was the mod culture.
Yeah, the mod culture from London. And I totally get that. It just doesn't fit with the aesthetic of specifically Tatooine.
Yeah.
Right. And like, it's one thing for someone who looks like they fit in with Star Wars to have adopted these looks.
Mhm.
But instead it looks like someone who has these looks was put into Star Wars. Which
Yeah.
is kind of a weird, it's a weird flip, but it makes a huge difference in the execution.
Mhm.
And then finally, with the mod squad, the one action sequence that is quintessentially theirs is where the governor's assistant or secretary, whoever it is trying to run away, and so he hops in a speeder and zooms away. Well, sort of zooms.
This is what brings
creeps-
spectacle down.
He
for
creeps
people.
away, and then Boba's like, "Mod squad, fetch me that person," and so they all hop on their Vespas and they go down the road at 20 miles an hour. And
Oh, you're being generous.
it's so bad. It is so incredibly slow, and there are no stakes whatsoever, because if anybody got hit, they at most would get knocked down and have a bruise, right? Like, this
I mean,
is
they don't they like fly through like some glass or some kind of map or something? It's just
they
one
go
of the
through a painting.
classic
They go through a painting.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
one of the classic tropes
Yeah. Like where like they're bringing the
of
painted glass.
of a parody chase.
Yeah. This kind of things that happens in Monty Python,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera.
Or
Airplane.
cartoons.
Yeah, or cartoons. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's not supposed to happen in
And,
mean-
and a relatively serious.
presumably a series. I mean, maybe we're just approaching it from the wrong angle.
Yeah, maybe
it
this was
just
meant to be a comedy.
Maybe there was supposed to be a laugh track over this, and they just forgot to put it in before they uploaded it to Disney Plus. I don't know.
Okay, Steven.
Okay, so I'm going to be the kindest of all of you. I gave Spectacle a 6. And you know what? I'm going to start with the praise. The inside the cockpit scenes of Din Djarin.
Din
Djarin.
Djarin.
I don't care. The Mando flying the N1 were as pretty a thing as you're going to get almost in all of Star Wars. Like, give me some big space battles with those kinds of scenes cut in it, where like you have like the an X-wing or an N1 cockpit rotate around. I don't know, like another Death Star out in the distance. Or don't do another Death Star, that's been done to death. But you know what I mean? If we could get the fight over Endor with, you know, in a lot of ways, the N1 looks kind of weird within Star Wars because just when it was introduced, it's too shiny. You know, it's the same complaint we're getting with others.
And that was just the, like, at the time,
it was the
I know
aesthetic.
Lucas wanted the CGI to be super clean and sheeny.
But credit to its design, it's one of the few Star Wars fighters that actually has a bubble cockpit canopy like what we're used to with actual fighter jets now.
Yeah.
Because, hey, it's as much visibility as you can get, and when he makes those turns, you get to enjoy it, right? In an X-wing cockpit, I don't know if we would get the same effect.
No, well, because it's not domed, so you don't have that
curve.
Yeah, the curve.
But I would still like to see them try, because I want to see some more of that kind of shot, because, boy, it was good. So the next step down, take a step down on praise. I'll give him credit. This is still from the same episodes, which is sad because these are the highlighted.
These are the Mando-centric episodes, so they don't really count.
Right. So I'll give them credit, though. The design team said, we need a cool-looking space station, and they went out and they stole from Halo.
Yep.
And you know what? Full marks, because Halo is beautiful. It's great. If you got to steal something, steal it from good stuff. Hey, you got the right idea. And you know what? Do more of it because you need the help. Because everything else after that is, oh no, baby, what is you doing?
I will say, though, I liked the planet that Luke was on.
The bamboo planet?
I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I mean,
it was slightly different terrain on an arboreal theme.
Yeah, it's not something you normally see.
Different. I hate, like, this kind of goes into like the plot thing, but I really do hate the kind of bits, and it's just because no one would ever say it when they were in like the crappy place in the world or whatever. But you know, they open up to the beautiful expanse and the vista. Feel the wind, feel the force. Can't you feel the circle of life? You know, nobody says that when they open the window to the brick wall that's 3 feet in front of them. Oh, feel the life here in New York City. But it's just kind of a trope, right? Where you have that big expanse opening to it. And at some point, it's just like, man, at some point, you got to accept the fact that the Force exists in other places that aren't just beautiful nature and introduce well-balanced, well-rounded Jedi to this, which isn't going to happen just because by nature, it's just not going to. We already know because the sequels have already told us how this is going to go. Anyways.
Well, I think that is probably more because Luke is a terrible teacher and master.
Oh my gosh. We're plot. We're full plot.
We'll get into that.
Back down off this. So more complaints for spectacle. Good Lord, Star Wars. You are a galaxy. Get me off Tatooine. Andrew and I had this discussion before you got here, Joel, and I didn't say it before because I wanted to just drop it on you live. But you know what? Star Wars does not have to be a galaxy. At this point, with the amount of it that we have seen, it could be a solar system.
Yep, a singular solar system where
and the travel times make a lot more sense.
They make a heck of a lot more sense because hey, Mustafar. Well, what planet's Mustafar? It's a moon. You know, one of the big planets just has Yavin has a bunch of moons. We've been to one of those moons. Mustafar could be another one of those moons.
Yep.
Like, good grief, people, reach out, branch out, take me somewhere else, show me something new. If we have to go back to sand, oh my God, Obi-Wan, go away. If we have to go back to the stupid sand world, that is by definition the place no one wants to be in. People all try to leave, yada, 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 yada. I don't need more stories from this place. Go somewhere. Like this is all spectacle. You want to show me a really cool sweeping landscape? You can do that in the desert. It's been done. We saw it with Dune. We've seen it with some other stuff. But you don't do that for me. And that's all the desert has to offer. So give me something else, please.
No, it has the little water bulbs that you can get.
Dig up you dig up the scaly monster that's a centaur creature, centipede thing.
Or you just have an unlimited supply of burnable wood.
Okay, this is plot stuff.
Okay, so on that note, I think I have exhausted some spectacle complaints. So now that we're done with that, let's move into some performance. Who did I give it to first?
You give it to me.
You gave
it to Joel?
Yeah.
I'll give it to Andrew then.
Oh, yay.
That sounds so enthusiastic.
So I gave performance a 4. It
Yeah.
honestly, the biggest thing for me was Tamora Morrison. I mean, like he is a fine actor. It's just he's a very stoic guy. So most of the time that means that you need to pair him with someone who is going to pry information out of him.
Right.
Yes.
Meaning that they're going to ask him questions. They're going to goad him into interacting.
Reactions and
And
I think that's part of the issue is that every single character in the show was stoic.
yeah, so then you have his foil, which is Fennec.
Yeah.
And she is also very stoic and
Yeah.
very,
a quiet individual loner assassin.
Yeah. So you don't really have any kind of interaction because both of them are just kind of just really short sentences
Yeah.
with a lot of stuff. And then the only other time that he's interacting with stuff is, at least in the beginning of the show, is whenever he's with the Tuscans, and they're not talking; they're just grunting at each other again.
And they didn't even try to make use of the sign language that Din Djarin already used
Mhm.
in
And
canon
that would have been
material.
cool because then they could have like subtitles
Yeah.
in there, and you could have a little bit more
They
interaction.
did a little bit of it, but because it was kind of like for Boba, he was kind of using some sign language mixed with just English.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Spoken slowly because that's what you do to natives, I guess. It just didn't quite hit as well. I would have
Yeah.
liked to have seen it more where
Well,
almost
it was the only translation of what they said that we got was him going, "Do you mean this? Do you mean this? Oh, you must mean this." Right? And it was just very clunky.
Yeah. So I would have probably given the performance a 0 had it not been for the technical achievement that they did with Luke in episode 6.
man, you gave this AI a lot of credit.
Well, okay, no, okay, so they're definitely Uncanny Valley. Weird.
I'm just saying 0 to a 4 is a lot to put on the weight of one episode of an AI.
But seriously, like
People showed up and said their lines. That's at least a 1.
I guess.
And as
Okay,
far
so
as we know, the
3
lines were
points. Okay,
correct.
fine. 3 points for Luke. So the really cool thing is, so this was essentially deepfake technology that
Yeah.
they used. On top of his voice was actually not a voiceover. It was essentially AI learning that they pulled all of his audio files from the original films and books that he is narrated before for audiobooks and a bunch of other voiceover stuff. And they kind of just pushed it all into a computer
Mhm.
and blah, 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 and then guess what? Now we have Luke. Now the inflection was a little weird
Yeah,
at
his cadence
times.
was a little
Cadence was a
strange.
little strange. But honestly, the technical achievement's really impressive because, obviously Mark Hamill is getting older at this point, and he could probably do a good impression of himself whenever he's younger.
As a young Luke, yeah.
But even then, I feel that he still wouldn't be able to hit it perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so unless you change actors completely, like I'll say Sebastian Stan is always, kind of what everyone's
It's
talking
floated
about
out there, yeah.
as someone that could at least play the look of Luke.
Mhm.
But honestly, it was just really impressive.
Yeah.
And I had to give it points for that. Unfortunately, there was no other points to give for the rest of stuff. And mostly just because they just didn't give the actors enough to work on.
Yeah.
Like there just wasn't anything there.
Right, yeah, like with every single character being reserved and stoic and
Mhm.
passive in terms of social interaction, they don't have dialogue.
Yeah,
And
like
so
if you had like this really outgoing extrovert of a partner in Fennec, then you could possibly have some fun interactions
Yeah.
to pull this stoic,
and it can
facade.
be really fun to play the high energy versus straight man dynamic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And both are necessary in that dynamic. It's
Mhm.
really, when it's done well, it's really entertaining.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to jump in.
Sure, go ahead.
Man, you can take all my points.
You
I
darn right.
have like no points left.
You're done right. So I gave performance a 5, and none of that was based on any kind of AI deep learning. Just gonna say it right now.
Hey,
Okay.
I get impressed with technology.
So, I mean, I think it's a very fair point that Tamara Morrison is really good at the stoic. Which, if we need Boba Fett, boom, nailed it.
Done,
This
yeah.
is who Boba Fett is in the minds of everyone who grew up with him. Right? He's
Yeah.
the stoic, cool, can handle it, gruff, whatever. That's him. Nailed it. Perfect. Fine. What they gave him to work with wasn't great, and I don't know that he ever really had much opportunity to rise above it.
Mm.
There were some interactions with the Tuscans where I think there was some good interact because he was able to be very emotive, right? He had to use his hands, he had to be kind of over exaggerated, these kinds of things, and like teaching them the speeder bikes. You know, he had kind of that big
that was a pretty fun sequence.
That Papa smile, you know, big proud Papa, and that shone through. I really liked that. I thought that gave him a good chance.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to take all the high energy characters now, and we're going to talk about them because of all the things going on in this. And I don't even know the characters' names, and that's kind of sad. But like the mayor's major domo,
he was fun.
He was good. He was a good change from everything else because Lord knows we need a change from everything else because everyone can't be gruff and stoic to each other because then there's no dialogue.
Well, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I actually really appreciated in the final episode he mentions being educated on Coruscant because like he's just got kind of a normal American English speaking voice,
right? As
opposed to previous, at least male Twi'leks. I think only Bib Fortuna showed up on screen for the films.
For the films.
But he was speaking Huttese at the time, and then the Twi'leks in
Rebels?
Clone Wars and Rebels have a really thick accent. Really, Hera's the only one that we hear speaking without much of an accent.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really nice to get an example of the fact that, you know, these different species are not a monolith, right? Like the individuals have different backgrounds.
Well, and each species is so spread across this presumably large galaxy that it's very easy to pick up an accent from different places. Like if you were raised on Coruscant, you have a different accent than someone.
He should have had an English accent to match up with the Imperial standard
the
accent
prequel.
if he was from Coruscant. But you know,
whatever. But he had some good lines. He had some entertaining interaction. And, you know, he could be that. Lauren said it, you know, like, oh, he has such a perfect voice and manners and just be the ingratiating, oily, annoying individual.
Yeah.
But it's funny too because like you know whenever you see those archetypes of characters, you always feel like you know that they're like the slimy, oily kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he did like he had that, but he wasn't good at it.
He's kind of incompetent.
Yeah, he was just kind of just like this incompetent guy trying to be that guy.
Yeah.
And he just wasn't good at it.
So he's his own parody, which already plays into the idea that this is really just a parody of Star Wars.
It was a satire of Star Wars.
Yeah, a self-satire, the best kind of satire. But yeah, so him, and then maybe not high energy, but maybe one of the more unique characters we got. Another Twi'lek, actually, interestingly enough, but it was, I don't know her name, but the runner of the
Jessica Biel?
But she also did not have any accent.
No,
it was just American
talking.
English.
Yeah.
So presumably she was also educated on Coruscant.
Maybe that's just what happens when you take the heavy Twi'lek accent and you put it in the English proper Coruscant. You just get an American accent.
Then,
Jennifer Beals.
Jennifer Beals. Yeah,
but
I know
then the two kind of server Twi'leks that came up and were like, "Hey, do you want us to clean your helmet?" They also just had American English accents.
Clearly, we know where they came. We've
all of them, every single one,
where they came from.
Coruscant.
Yes, it's what happens to Twi'leks with good educations and raisings on Coruscant. They just somehow end up in the outer rim nowhere that is Tatooine.
So I will say for me, you know, the first thing in world building through linguistics, the first thing that I'm looking for is unique swear words,
Slang.
right? Yep. Stuff that reflects the values of the culture that you've made up.
Bantha spit.
And like, yeah, it's like Star Wars has that. It's not necessarily stuff that we can easily identify and say, oh,
this is the analog for that.
Well, not just this is the analog for that, but like they are calling out what they view as profane, right?
Yeah.
So, because there's a lot of it's just made up words, and so we can't tell what it is. Yeah. But the second thing is consistent accents, right? Like if you're from this place, then you have this kind of accent. That's what happens in the real world. If you grow up somewhere, then you can be traced back there by the way that you speak, by someone who has an ear for that and understands.
And even if it isn't just an accent, it's also just going to be the colloquialisms and the slang from that area. You know, for even just, you know, personal, if I travel, sometimes it'd be hard for someone to say, oh, you're definitely from the South until I say y'all. And then it's, oh yeah, duh, obvious. Where are you from? Yeah, easy, nailed it. So yeah, that is an issue they run into. So I've gone on. You've taken. You're leaning into performance here, Joel. So I'm going to hand this off to you before I steal any other points.
Yeah. So I gave it.
He's so infused.
I gave it a 3.
Whoa!
And
I'm going to jump in here. Even though I handed you the baton, snatching it
It's
back.
like,
Still mine.
I touched it. I touched it.
No, it's not. You didn't lick it. It's not yours yet.
Wow.
Just want to say,
Wow.
I just want to say, usually on reviews, performance is one of those things that can hold up a bad show or film, because it can be difficult for us to say, hey, yeah, they weren't necessarily given great material, but there was a lot of things we liked.
Mm-hmm.
This is such a collapse from that standard that it's pretty impressive.
Well, and it's always interesting too, because like if you go back to like the Mando seasons, like Pedro Pascal is a very emotive actor, and they put him under this helmet for the entire show, and you can get so much emotion from him.
It is impressive just in his voice.
Yeah, but then you have Tamora Morrison, and he's a good actor, but he's already such a stoic character that you just don't get that kind of.
Well, he wasn't wearing his helmet for
most
90% of the show,
despite the fact that he is on a planet where jumping onto a speeder to race around with just nothing on your face is a great way to go blind from flying sand. Maybe that's why the Mod Squad goes so slow, because the Major Domo didn't have a chance to close the canopy, and he risked going blind if you go too fast.
There we go. So
take the reins.
Performance 3, not thrilled.
Nailed it.
And you guys already took all of my negative points, and I have the one thing.
I had the best negative. It was fine.
The one thing that I have to give back and say this was worth 3 points. It was the Wookiee. I thought that this was the best Wookiee costume that we have seen to date. It was the most emotive.
He was very emotive.
In the face, there was a lot of mouth movement, which we've obviously seen before, but there were eyebrow motions. There was all sorts of stuff. The hands were it was I don't know what it was about the hands. Like,
well, it was the knuckle. It was the knuckle. He do the clench, and you get the little spark of electricity. Oh, he's mad.
Maybe that's why I felt it was so weird when I was watching him on screen. Because not that he was awkward, it's just that I wasn't used to a Wookiee being so emotive.
No, I think that's true. There was a little bit of uncanny valley for me with him as well. Because man, this is a very expressive Wookiee. It's just not what you expect.
Right, but like in the scene where he's just kind of gotten kicked to the curb by the Hutt twins and released by Boba as what he sees in disgrace, right?
Because he's having a bad day.
Yeah, he's having a terrible day. He goes to the local cantina. He's getting drunk, and he just wants to hurt someone. And you see him watching the group of Trandoshans as they're having their little party over in the corner. And I followed his emotional journey and had a more interesting time in that one scene than with Boba in the entire show.
Whew. Woof.
So,
okay. Well, on that note, I think it's time to move on to the score. So we're looking at the music. We're looking at what's going on, maybe some background, or how well are we selling emotions with some music here. And I'm going to go first. I'll start us off on a high note. But I gave it a 7. At the end of the day, it is still Star Wars. It has recognizable Star Wars music. Like the baseline for what is a Star Wars musically was set a long time ago, and that's all bangers. And this certainly falls off a little bit from it, and maybe some of the stuff doesn't always hit at the right time, but it's coming from such a strong pedigree that it's hard for me to really say that it came down really far, because the specific pieces still hit how they need to hit. And it's just those 2 episodes again, when you get the Mando theme, you know what it is, you know what you're getting. And I think it's actually kind of impressive to me, because I'm not the biggest fan of The Mandalorian, and it may just be that it landed, metaphorically like a drop of water or one of these little watermelon things in the middle of the desert that is Tatooine, where that hit, and I was just like, oh yes, awesome, this is what we're getting. But for me, it's still hitting relative notes for me that are Star Wars, right? It's certainly not there, because for me, most Star Wars music would be a 9 or a 10. So it's falling short for reasons that I'm going to let y'all handle. I really want to just like throw this in the middle and let y'all just fight over it, but
So I gave score 5.
Andrew took it.
Really just it was derivative music of the Mando seasons for the most part,
Yeah.
but the tracks that they took from that and then kind of molded into their own, like they tried to have their own relative theme for Boba,
Mhm.
and it did not
Which
mesh
did
well.
like that theme did show up in the Mandalorian in the episodes that Boba was in.
Yes, it did. And I don't know, like it just felt kind of just most of the time just kind of out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, Joel, I'm going to kind of take this from you.
Man, you're taking all of my points.
The one
That's it.
scene that just felt it was just so egregious, and it just took me so far out of the show was the first episode. At the end of the episode, whenever he's like putting his armor
so
on,
bad.
and it has like just like just these weird just horns and people singing and
Like, okay, so the George Clooney Batman films where Batman and Robin and Batgirl in the last film
Yep.
are putting on their costumes, and you have them turning as they put on their belt, they put on the chest plate, they put on the gauntlets, and they put on the boots. This was worse. It was so bad.
Yeah, it was
There is a way to make putting on a beautiful suit of armor a really cool thing to watch.
mhm.
Especially backed with
so-
good music.
This was not that at all.
I-
And the music made it so much worse.
A sequence, well, there's 2 sequences that I would recall that are fantastic for putting on armor. And both of them involved, like basically the assistant, like helping the person in question put on armor. Was 2 Towers, Theoden, whenever he is basically he's putting on his armor before the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Yeah, and he's monologuing.
Yeah, he's
and-
monologuing. The lights behind him is just fantastic. And then the other one was from Last Samurai.
Yeah, I was thinking of Last Samurai.
Whenever she is putting on all of his clothes and then all the armor and everything like that, as he's just kind of like, it's very intimate,
Mhm.
and it's just fantastic sequence.
But you've got to make those sequences about the character,
Mm-hmm.
and the armor is just kind of a set piece. To it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And in this, it felt like it was kind of the opposite,
Yeah.
where like it reminded me of like just some really old like Power Rangers or like giant robot
Or
animes
like
where
an
like the armor
action-
would like fly to him.
Yeah, or like an action figure commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just the music just really just sucked all
Yeah.
of the excitement out of the episode for me. So yeah, that's about it.
Yeah,
Man.
so I gave score a 6.
Yeah.
So like, roughly in the same boat, and you stole all my points other than Boba's theme was kind of fun. Like that was the best thing I could say about it.
I mean, like again, like it's not fair to compare episodes 5 and 6 with anything else because
they belong in a different
they
movie.
belong in a different
Show.
series.
Yeah.
And like all the stuff whenever Luke is training Grogu with like the obviously the hints of the Force theme from Yoda's theme to Luke's theme and all these other kind of like little hints and stuff that they have throughout the episode are fantastic. But that is totally not fair, and you are just nostalgia baiting your audience to give you likes on Facebook. Stop it, Disney.
Okay, well, on that note, let's go to the plot. Everyone's favorite. Let's see. I went first last time. Ooh, high note.
Okay, we've been
Ooh.
stealing all of Joel's
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
let Joel
take
have
it.
it.
I'm gonna take it.
Let Joel run with it.
Plot. I was as generous as I felt was reasonable, and I gave plot a 2 out of 10.
Our lowest individual scores.
Lowest
thus
individual
far.
score. It's so okay. Literally in my notebook, the first note that I wrote down under plot is "Oh boy" with a frowny face. Where to begin? There are 2 main threads. Okay, so you can kind of split it up into episodes 1 through 4, where you have Boba having 2 parallel stories with how did he get to the point where he met up with Mando after escaping the Sarlacc, and then swapping over, you have the current timeline where he's dealing with, well, I I grasped power. What do I do with it, and how do I keep it? And then you have episodes 5 and 6, which are just part of Mandalorian season 3, or at least should have been. And the most egregious part about that is not only that they don't make, like, they're not about Boba. They're not about Boba's story. They do not progress any of the plot lines that have to do with Boba.
He's not in it up until the very end of that last episode.
And he doesn't even have dialogue.
Yeah. And so that's bad. But what's worse is that these episodes now aren't in season 3 of The Mandalorian. And there are very important plot points that are touched on and dealt with. And, the status quo is fundamentally changed for The Mandalorian and Grogu across these episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if
it's
you go from
reading.
Yeah. So like this has become Mandalorian season 2.5, because if you skip from Mandalorian season 2 and go right into Mandalorian season 3, presumably whenever that comes out, you're going to be like, oh, well, Grogu's back and he has a new starfighter now. And I'm just confused.
And he's not technically a Mandalorian anymore.
Right. He's been kicked out of his clan.
But see, this is why Disney did you a solid. They instead of scattering this story across 4 episodes, which in a well-edited story is what would have happened.
Take my points.
Get wrecked. Instead, Disney took it and they put it into one small consumable bite, less than like an hour and a half, and you could just have a little Mando story. Just pick up these 2 episodes.
Yeah. So only watch episode. Technically, you have to watch the last episode, because you have to see what Grogu's choice was.
Comes back,
that's
so you
true.
have to watch
3 episodes.
You have to watch 3 episodes.
They're baiting you into getting almost 50% of the show.
Yeah. But anyway, so even taking that aside, right, and saying we only really have 5 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah. Then
you're still left with the fact that there's no character development for Boba, going from I'm a bounty hunter, I'm an independent contractor kind of dude.
Yeah.
I have this traumatic experience, almost dying in the Sarlacc. I barely escape. I'm delirious for days, captured by Tuskens, and I'm trying to escape because I'm trying to get back to what I view as civilization.
The status quo.
Yeah. But at some point, when he is finally able to escape and get back, he doesn't, and he decides to come back and embrace the Tuskens, and we have no idea why. Like there's no development given, and largely, like we talked about, I think that's due to just not having any opportunity for dialogue.
Yeah.
And then
it's hard to have him just talk to himself.
Yeah. And so there's that whole, like, just no support for character motivations going throughout there. And then on the flip side, the other half of the show, which is the current timeline story, nothing makes any sense whatsoever. So they show up to Jabba's palace and they kill Bib Fortuna. Okay, fine. So that means that Boba Fett is now in charge, which is a trope that that's a totally separate thing. Just kill the guy in charge. That makes you in charge, right?
You kill.
Anyway, but in order to wield power, you have to be able to enforce it,
right,
in some way.
Which he does not.
Which he doesn't. There's literally him and Fennec and a droid who can spout exposition sometimes. and then at the beginning of that kind of plot line, they bring in the 2 Gamorreans that are going to act as his guards, right? And they're like, we captured them. Who captured them? There's nobody there.
Yeah. The
droid?
The rat catcher droid caught him. Just ran up and found him.
Oh my goodness. And so, consequently, Jabba's palace, all of those scenes are completely empty, right? Like there's no background characters whatsoever in there. There's no, I have a squad of anything.
Let's break out the goon squad.
Yeah. Like there's none of that. And so when he goes to recruit the mod squad, it falls flat, because it's like, oh, well, finally you're trying to get some muscle that you should have had 3 episodes ago. And
you chose like the worst kind of muscle you could have found.
But if you started from a position of muscle and like it's starting to dwindle because you're losing it to attrition, and you're like, we've got to get some allies.
In the ranks,
like that you start to understand the motivation. You start to see how things fit together. And in none of the background, I think it's consistently across the board, none of the supporting information that you need to understand character motivations and character decisions throughout is really given. It's just written from a perspective of here's decisions, here is action that occurs, and we don't care if you understand it.
Okay, so
Yeah, Andrew, get in there.
yeah, I'm just gonna bring it in here. So I gave it a score of 4, and there
Ooh,
I could
wow.
go. I thought I was being harsh. I would have
So
given it lower
generous.
had I realized that Joel was going to go lower than I was. Okay, so I could go on and on about every single episode of like what went wrong, blah 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 blah. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk about one thing, and it is nostalgia baiting of what Disney is doing. So, tinfoil hat time. I could possibly say that okay, you get through the first 4 episodes of production for Boba Fett, and this is not normally how production works for these kind of TV shows. But just anyways, tinfoil hat time. Get through the first 4 episodes. They're already written, and they're pretty much already going through the production process of filming and all this other kind of stuff. And then an executive and focus group or whoever looks at this and you're like, ooh, I don't know if this is going to really track well with our audience.
Yeah, they do like test audiences.
Yeah,
or
we
whatever,
need to save this. So then they're like, bring in the Mando, and we're gonna hit all the little dopamine hits and everything. And don't get me wrong, I loved those episodes; they were great, but those were meant to be in a whole other show.
Yeah,
and it's one of those things where it's one, not fair for viewers because now it is required watching if you want to continue on with Mando season 3.
yeah.
Mhm.
And then it's also not fair because you were essentially inserting in characters that just or side stories that don't necessarily need to be here for the central mechanic of the story, which
Yeah.
is essentially at that point a filler episode. And filler episodes historically are not good because
Mhm.
they don't move the plot forward.
Mhm.
They don't generally have the main character in the episode, which of course neither of these did. And it just doesn't track really well. And the problem with that is if you wanted to have different perspectives for each chapter or episode for this show, you could have just spliced those 2 episodes into the first 4 episodes. There's
Yeah.
more than enough there's more than enough time and stuff you can cut out of each of those episodes to make a coherent story. Still keep going through those 4 episodes to where, you have half the episode is Boba Fett, half the episode is Mando, and you keep viewers by doing that. And when you just have basically 4 episodes of just basically nothing, and then you have 2 episodes where everyone cares about what is happening because it's established characters. We have Luke, we have Grogu, we have Ahsoka, we have Mando,
Mhm.
and we
Yeah.
all want to know what is going to happen with them. No one cares about Boba Fett.
Yeah, and just to jump in there, I mean, even nostalgia baiting,
Yeah.
right? But even to the point of Ahsoka didn't even have to be there.
No,
Those lines could have been Luke's lines while Grogu was otherwise occupied on the
it
hill.
could have been C-3PO. We don't care.
Yeah,
Like,
it could have just been him talking to
or just a
R2-D2.
random droid.
Yeah, because the only reason she's there is, hey, remember we've got that Ahsoka show coming up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's and
Well,
like,
they-
and that's why he was like,
baiting
"Oh, I'm
and
not
it's
going to
also
see you
selling the
again."
new.
Yeah, they wanted to establish that she and Luke have met
Mhm.
and that she is not like joining his effort. She's doing her own thing.
Yeah, she's going to go do her own because
Yeah.
at the end,
Got to
yeah.
sell that story.
But okay, so like you have this, you could have done so much more than just. I mean, like what it felt like was an eject button for what was a subpar story. And Disney has historically, and we've talked about it before on the show, is if something does not perform, they will ignore it and they will erase its existence completely because it did not, pass whatever metric that they felt it
Mhm.
needed to be. And I think that they feel that this was going to happen with Boba Fett. And they were like, we have to save this because we can't let this be a failure.
Yeah, and I guess that's my time to jump in. So
yeah,
Joel had a 2.
I got nothing.
Andrew had a 4 high point because I also have a 2. Holy cow! Joel gave you a preview of what his notes look like. I'm gonna throw mine out there. There had to be a better way.
This is the way.
No, this is not the way. And Andrew's hitting on it, where the way the episodes were edited. I mean, we talked about this with Cowboy Bebop, right? Netflix's live
Mhm.
action, where they did a good job among other things that they did, but they did a good job of working the main character's story and the other side of the story in, where every episode you got a piece of each, right?
Mhm.
And that helps you understand where the characters were, what they were doing, what their motivations were, yada yada. And you know what? That show's not getting a second season.
Yep.
And they still did a better job of it than this did.
Yep.
Mhm.
And that is not a good thing to be saying.
And they have stated that this was going to be the only season of this show, or
Right, yeah.
Book of
That
Boba
was
Fett, or
that was
whatever.
always, I think, always the expectation. It's just one
Mhm.
piece, a carryover piece, or whatever you want to call it, etc. Which again, we're getting more and more into the point of, well, then why is it even necessary if there is no larger impacts outside of the 2.5 episodes we got that relate to other shows?
Mhm.
Which is kind of a very Marvel thing, but at the same time, usually Marvel is more entertaining in the process, so it's a little more forgivable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But man, there are so many just bizarre choices. I mean, just us, because we all watched the last episode before we came on to record. Just us mocking, the decisions by the characters. Like, the characters are brain dead, and honestly, if Blaster Bolt weren't attracted to 3 of these characters' armor, they would all be dead multiple times over.
Well, we're like, let's not even talk about the fact that the 2 people that can fly decide to land in a completely uncoverable spot in the middle of this street, while they had the drop on all these people in buildings that they could have
Well,
shot and killed, but they shot all the people on the ground.
They
Yep.
flew up above the buildings, shot the people on the ground, then landed on the ground to shoot people on the rooftops. Holy crap, people. I know that the Obi-Wan series hasn't been released yet, but take the high ground. You have a jetpack. The building that is behind you is taller than the rooftops in front of you. Land on top of it. If you say, oh, well, the jetpack can only fly for so long, great. Claim the high ground with that move. That was a great...
They have established that thing is just...
It just does whatever.
Wings.
Yeah, I mean, if we go all the way back to Mando, he could fly. One dude flew up
He's
all the way
flying
up to the
high
razor
altitude,
crest.
like,
Yeah,
going for it.
It just does whatever it wants, goes wherever it wants. Land up on the higher rooftop and shoot down on your opponent. Like, that actual moment of fighting was a good start of, oh yeah, like they bust out with the surprise move. We had the little reversal with the Major Domo going out thinking he's got the terms of surrender.
Which that was hilarious.
That was a great scene. Yeah, like they were so set up for something good there. And then just all the tactical decisions just go straight down the tubes. And it's just, what are you doing? What is everyone doing?
And I understand that, like, this is like super pedantic for probably most people that are going to watch and hypothetically enjoy this show, is that they don't care about the tactical decisions of what people are doing in the show. They want to see a Western samurai level style of show.
They just want it to look cool.
They want it to look cool, and they want it to be exciting. They want there to be stakes. So you need to have your guys being shot at instead of being these cold-blooded killers that clearly understand.
And that's a reasonable desire.
And that's
a
totally
reasonable
fine.
expectation.
There's no stakes when every blaster bolt hits your armor.
No. There are, because every single time they got stun locked.
Oh my gosh.
It increases their global cooldown by 0.5 seconds.
It's a crowd control technique.
Oh my god.
They're not actually dealing damage.
And I mean, like, just within the last episode, there's just so many things. Like, the destroyer droids show up, and they're apparently incompetent and can't hit people just running in straight lines down the street. They just shoot the ground in front of them or the air above. And I get, maybe, it's Disney, you can't just have wholesale slaughter. But like, if you can't have wholesale slaughter, then don't put something in front of essentially unarmed people that will wholesale slaughter them, because then it just feels unrealistic.
That is a very fair point. There has to be a certain level of power scaling.
Yeah, if your executives are not going to stomach what this power scaling means, if you don't have Marvel level management where they say, "Oh, you want to level half Manhattan? Yeah, go for it. We'll figure out the consequences later." If you don't have that, then you can't drop big obstacles in front like this. It has to be some kind of, again, smaller scale issue. You have to have a different way. You have to be, I hate to say this, it has to be cleverer writing. There has to be more intelligent things going on other than just large, slow object, immovable, that can't be damaged, that shoots sometimes.
Well, so
Sometimes.
the reason why
emphasis on sometimes.
The reason why you had these very large robots that are lumbering and relatively stupid is the fact that so you could have Boba Fett riding a Rancor coming in and saving the day.
Which also made no sense because he's already established that he has Slave 1 to apply tactical air superiority.
He fled back to the palace to get the Rancor.
As far as we know, the Rancor could have been right on the outskirts of the town.
A box somewhere, but he flew away and could have very easily flown to Jabba's palace. Assumptions, right? Mm-hmm. Because if nothing else, if you lost time on the jetpack, which we already established can fly forever to whatever height, etc., if you lost time there, you make it up in, I don't know, the spaceship that you're in that comes back with maximum air superiority, and you don't just destroy the pikes, you just destroy the buildings they're on, and they're all. And again, we're back to mass scale slaughter, and Disney can't have that. But
but it's the power scaling at that point because it's don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Well, don't bring a gun to a starship fight.
Yeah, or do and find out that you're going to lose.
Yeah,
it's just that. These kinds of things. The problem is they gave us the option, and now that we know the option exists, that we know that Mandalorian armor, they blatantly have their jetpacks, well, they can just fly. Well, we know they're all capable of this. So then you have to spend that whole time going, dude, push the button, take off, take off.
Well, and again, I understand that it is super pedantic, but it really is. It takes us out of it whenever we're just you have this ability. It's the same problem with Superman. Superman forgets that he has powers because it is not convenient to the plot because it would solve the story.
Or he's
immediately. And it is also on the flip side of that.
There's no in between.
On the flip side of that, it is immensely satisfying to see a protagonist run through their options, right? This is the best solution to my problem. Oh no, my enemies are smart and they countered that. And so now I'm in a worse position.
Now I need to come up with a new solution.
Now I have to take this solution. And then, oh no, that didn't work because of this other thing that they did. And I'm in an even worse position.
Yeah.
And so like that kind of progression through a conflict scene is deeply satisfying when executed intelligently.
Well, and there are ways to essentially hamstring your heroes in this case of okay, so they get the drop on these guys and they're in the air, and then if there is some kind of element that the Pikes have thought of because they know that Boba Fett has a jetpack, they're not stupid.
They set up a laser grid where you can't exceed 50 meters, or
all you need is you just need one thing in there to just say he can't use his jetpack right now. So now they're stuck in the middle of this non-cover scenario, and now there's actual stakes.
Yeah,
we had kind of that with. Again, not going back to the episodes that were actually semi-watchable, but the Mandalorian episodes where you had the duel, right, between him and I don't remember the other
just big guy,
but big dude Mando, right?
Yeah,
and he challenges him to a duel, and
it was a Vizsla, which is important because of ties back to the Death Watch
noble
guard,
family, right?
Yeah.
But the rules of honorable combat dictate we both take our jetpacks off.
Yep,
and okay. We have, and I was actually kind of
and they're on a
platform of death,
which they have intelligently already demonstrated the consequences of falling off, because Mando loses his balance, he falls off, he has to use the jetpack to get back on. So automatically we've got stakes when they take.
We know what the risks are now, and I was actually kind of like, oh, that'd be really cool. Like they duel and they actually use the jetpacks. Oh no, rules of honor to say, okay, that's a whole different kind of cool, because now we have huge risks and consequences to what could. And you're both wearing armor. Presumably it's a duel to yield, not duel to death. But now it could very well be just a duel to death because you trip.
I'm pretty sure it's a duel to death regardless, but it's kind of the analog of two knife fighters taping their other hands together.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those things where they are forced to have conflict. You're on a narrow catwalk and you don't have access to the jetpack. Cool. And that's the kind of thinking and kind of solutions. Not that Cad Bane walks out and tells Boba, "Oh, it's a matter of honor. You better take off your jetpack." But you need to have some solution to force that to happen.
Yeah,
and they just didn't. And all I'm doing right now is just hitting on one episode.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I just want to go over
Andrew
here.
Wants this.
Okay, so if you're going to bring in a large overarching franchise or I'll say alternate franchise
for
character,
Cad Bane. Someone
like
who's
for
very
Cad Bane.
recognizable.
Yeah, if you're gonna bring him in, don't bring him in for 3 scenes and then kill him. Like,
Yeah.
make him be episode 1, and then he is the main antagonist for Boba Fett every single time he tries to do something, and now you have actual stakes and emotional stakes between these two because they've already have a history together.
Yep.
Now
It's
that he is
almost
there,
like you have a protagonist and an antagonist, and they have conflict.
yeah,
Which is almost like basic concepts of story writing.
yeah, well, because then it makes their showdown at the end so much more impactful, especially for people like me who have not watched Clone Wars.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, we didn't drop 2 episodes of Luke and Ahsoka so that we could kill one of them.
Yeah.
We sure did do that for Cad Bane, though, which is just kind of, I mean, it's kind of a waste of built up over time.
Yeah, it's a waste of a very, relatively important bounty hunter character.
Yeah.
that people and fans love just because he's just kind of that guy, and now he's gone.
And honestly, a fairly impressive live action adaptation
I
of
think it looked pretty cool.
of a
He looked great.
animated concept.
Yeah, he looked great. But for the lowness of the stakes and how low risk most everything felt for the show, for it just to be, oh, Cad Bane's dead now. Like, wow, that was could have been a tremendous payoff, but there was nothing in the build up to this that really told us we were going to get that kind of payoff.
Well, and this kind of goes back to my tinfoil hat, where I feel that like they got 4 episodes in, they're like, we need to save this. Like, hit the button,
Pull the lever.
Wrong lever.
Well, other issues here. We'll go to large scale.
Nope. All right, we're going. We're going.
I have not let go of this yet. Back to the overarching plot and the assembly of the outline. So, in a lot of ways, because we talked about this, right? We liked a lot of the Tusken interaction.
Yeah, it was fine.
The flashbacks kind of had some of the best story,
Mm-hmm.
but there is a risk in relying on lots and lots of flashbacks in that inherently a flashback cannot progress a story. It can tell you more about a character and give you more insight into motivations, but it does not make today become tomorrow. It makes today become what already happened.
Mm-hmm.
So much of the early episodes they were almost entirely flashback.
Yeah, at least the first 2.
Which you could have just, if you took a different approach to it, you could have just told that story.
Yeah, without flashbacks.
Without it being a flashback, just make it live story.
Yeah, him just get out of the Sarlacc, then he's in the Tusken camp. We don't need any kind of thing, and then you in episode 3 or whatever. Now you do the little montage of him getting rid of Bib Fortuna and getting his armor back and that kind of stuff, and boom, now you're here in the present. Let's go.
And suddenly we have maybe a better understanding of his motivations. Maybe he's already had all of these, because it takes so long for all those flashbacks to play out over 4 episodes.
Well, especially the one with Fennec, whenever he's saving her and all that. Like, you could have made that essentially live story, like you said, and boom, now we actually have some emotional weight to some of the stuff because it's happening when we're there, and we know that it's not a flashback.
Well, and it also makes more sense for, well, okay, I need to establish my own tribe, my own family. This was what I had, and I lost it. We don't know that until we're deep into this show, and that's his motivation for what he did, not even in the show to start everything off. Well, now we could have at least had a good motivation for what he's doing, and then get into the show of why is he doing this? Well, this is why he's doing it. We already saw what he wants now. We know it. It's just was not well assembled. And I think the real issue is, bad fights and unreasonably whatever dialogue, acting mixes that just didn't go well aside, you probably could have told a much better story if this was sliced and diced and put together in a different order.
Yeah. Like there's absolutely a better edit of this show that exists. Like,
or could exist.
Or could exist. Yeah.
So it's such a loss because, like, again,
release the Lucas cut.
Again, we kicked this off by saying this was kind of not like an unnecessary story, but just a story that no one was necessarily like clamoring for. And obviously, it's not going anywhere. All it really did was progress Ahsoka and Mando and their positions, really. So, like, you had an opportunity to, even though it's going to be a short burst, to tell something good, and maybe you make people be like, wow, I really wanted more of that, but you just you don't do it. And having said that, I think right now the fan reception is actually a lot higher than I would expect.
It's because of episodes 5, 6, and 7.
It was the pull the lever.
Hit the button because, we're clearly going on the wrong direction. We need to add nostalgia in here for people to get excited about it. And I mean, you could tell, you could look at historics of all social media. Probably most everything that is being talked about on the first 4 episodes is probably negative. And then boom, you have episode 5 and 6 and everyone is so excited and they're talking about it. They're excited to watch the next episode, blah, 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 blah. Oh, come on, Disney.
Yeah, well,
we know what you're doing.
Everything on social media up to that point was the chase. And it was kind of one of those things where you're like, I know I'm getting spoilered on this, but this sounds like a dumpster fire, so I don't know if I'm too concerned about it. And then everyone's like, ooh, excited spoilers. Like, now I have to kind of duck and dodge to avoid spoilers because is this some big payoff that I'm going to shortchange? No, okay, it's just they just picked up episodes that were going to be season 3 Mando and put them in this series.
Yeah,
wholesale with no building in, no build up to it, no nothing. This that episode 5 has 0 Boba Fett, right? There's no connection at all really to Tatooine outside of him going back to the mechanic, right?
Correct.
So I mean it's wholesale could have just happened in its own show on its own and they just dropped it in there.
So sorry, Joel, you haven't really talked in a while, but I'm just going to keep talking.
I agree.
I'm done. I'm all played out. I'm done.
So this is a storytelling trope that I'm not necessarily a fan of. But if they wanted to, I'll say, hook their audience immediately with the kind of the whole idea of the show is basically showing a scene from either the end of or in the middle of the thick of it of this final episode at the very first scene of episode 1 where they're all under fire and there's all this bad stuff happening and then it ends on a cliffhanger and then boom, now you're at the beginning of the story and then now we have to get up to that point. I'm not a big fan of that storytelling technique because it's kind of cheap, but it also would be a way to say, okay, we're going to pump the brakes for a minute. We're going to kind of show you some backstory, but you know what's coming, and it's going to be cool.
Yeah, if episode 1 had opened with Boba and the Mando back to back facing down the pikes, and they're getting clipped, and maybe something rings Boba's bell, and his vision swims, and he sits for a moment, and we have kind of that not a record scratch. How did I get here? But essentially that happens.
I bet you're wondering. Well, how I got here.
Right before the guys
how
from
I got these scars.
Yeah. Right before the guys from Freetown come in and save them, their backs are against each other, and trying to protect them.
Hold on now. Provided there's some better tactics going on, maybe they're in cover when this revelation moment happens, not just out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and you see them look at each other, and then you see the nod, and then obviously the jump over into the sunset, blaze of glory kind of thing.
The big, the really bright, they both come up over the wall, guns are coming out, and the really bright lights come up, and now we're in the past.
And that would fit so well with the Western motif that all Star Wars, especially on Tatooine, has. And you already have hooked me at that point. I can sit through 3 or 4 bad episodes before I start getting, I don't know about this.
How are we going to get to this payoff?
Yeah, but it's but I know Mando's in here. Maybe we can see, what happens, come on.
Yeah. And I'm not going to let Joel talk.
It would require a cohesive plan to pull something like that off, which I no longer believe that the people running Star Wars are capable of doing.
Well, I got nothing.
Woo! On that note, so speaking of cohesive plans, we also have another plot hole I won't say a plot hole, an issue just in episode 7 of, while all this is going down, including, the mechanic and Grogu are under threat from the Pikes because they're dumb and have just stumbled into the middle of this fight.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, all this is going down. R2-D2 is just sitting live in a hot X-Wing 3 blocks that way and could solve every one of these. He's not Chopper levels of kill things, but R2-D2 could solve that problem for you. Well, and you got multiple people there who can talk to R2-D2 and know he's here.
I mean, the prequels would disagree. He kills things.
No, I'm saying, but he's not Chopper. Chopper is insane.
Chopper actively goes out looking for opportunity.
He looks for murder.
Yes.
If we said, if we credit R2-D2 with some portion of the Death Star kills, then he eclipses Chopper, right? But it requires you to credit him for being in the back seat of that shot.
Yeah.
Well, no, but see, that's the thing is
He was unconscious at the time, so
Chopper is
he was just working. He was still
no, he got shot.
He did get shot.
He did get shot.
That's right. Yeah.
But no, Chopper is the cold-blooded killer. He is the psychopath. R2-D2 is the cool, collected murderer.
He's also kind of wow. Okay, now we've gotten this all the way that he's the cool, collected murderer. He's also kind of the conscience of like Luke in a way, because especially in this show, because Luke's just not a very good instructor. Like, what are you doing? And
okay, but that's the thing though. Luke was never meant to be a master. He was never meant to instruct people. Yeah, because he is impatient like his father, and he does not have the tools to be a mentor like Qui-Gon was or Yoda was. Like he is Mace Windu. Mace Windu is not a good master.
Woo, spicy takes. We're getting spicy takes on Star Wars.
He's
all
too
around
dangerous to be left alive.
Ooh, boy. But yeah, no, it's every time I think about it, I come up with more plot holes, and I don't let Joel talk. Joel, would you like to have something to say?
I would like to say that we have spent far too much time talking about a piece of media that does not deserve it.
No. It deserves every bit of this.
It does not deserve the recognition.
we're roughly an hour and a half.
We better wrap this up because we could go
last
forever.
No. Last, I got one more. I gotta get this one in. I gotta get this one in. We memed on it too hard. So we have the whole. He goes back to the Sarlacc pit to settle score with the and the given reason he goes back is because his armor. He needs his armor. It's in the pit. You dummy, you crawled out of this. You literally used your armor to blow a hole through the Sarlacc out of the sand and burst out of the sand in your armor. Unless the Tuskens just straight lied to you, which we don't get at any point, and just didn't tell you that, we just threw it back in the pit because it was worthless.
Well, no, I mean, they showed Jawa's taking it off of him.
Yeah, like we know that it's not in possession of the Sarlacc, so why are you here? And then we get into the brilliant moment of, I don't know, I'm just going to fly the whole starship into this pit for unknown reason.
Yeah, this thing ate me once, so I'm going to put my whole cockpit in its mouth.
And just see, it's fine, it's dead, right? Yeah, I killed it. Totally. And now we have this moment where now the Sarlacc has grabbed a hold of the fire spray and is holding it in place, which now has allowed us to officially, canonically, crown Lando Calrissian as the strongest man in the Star Wars universe. Because we calculated it required 2 tendrils, whatever you want to call them, appendages of the Sarlacc to hold the fire spray in place. Joel,
three maybe.
Maybe three.
It was
Three made it easy for math, right?
Yeah. Three made it easy for math because we're lazy. Joel calculated. So a basic function of any spaceship is that it achieves escape velocity to fly away from any planet.
Right. So a NASA rocket,
an SRB,
and it supplies at initial launch at sea level supplies. I think it was 3.3 million pounds of force.
Right. So
right there,
theoretically, and that's only one booster in that assembly.
Yeah.
So we're kind of kludging a little bit because it doesn't just launch itself into space. But
a spaceship of any kind has to be able to supply, roughly that amount of force in order to project the ship off the surface of the planet
and we can acknowledge it supposedly is a large and varied galaxy that we haven't seen, where some planets are going to have a larger gravity than the others, right? It's going to take more to get free.
like the different planets have different masses is something that is not acknowledged at all in Star Wars.
Okay, we have to get back to the point here.
The point here is, in Return of the Jedi, Lando Calrissian is grabbed by one tentacle appendage of the Sarlacc and is pulled down, except he holds on with the force of his grip, meaning that in theoretically, Lando can somehow survive over 1 million pounds of thrust
applied to his leg
through his arm. The man has got the grip strength. Like he could have leaned out of Cloud City back in Empire Strikes Back and grabbed a hold of the fire spray and told Boba, wait a minute, you're not allowed to leave with my buddy Han. And he could have held on and held him in place.
His bones are made of tungsten.
like miniature dwarf planet densities here or something going on.
Ligaments of carbon fiber.
Just incredible. Sorry, I wasn't going to miss an opportunity to bring that up because we spent a little too much time talking about it.
Oh man, we laughed so hard.
It's just, I cannot believe that someone sat down and drew that scene of the Sarlacc holding onto the fire spray with like 2 to 3, not like a whole like big mass of tentacles burst out and grabbed a hold. Just a couple little pinches, just got a little hold on to it, just got a grip, and just a spaceship is just stuck there, ignoring the whole "why are you even here" thing.
Now,
like,
to poke a hole in our fun, tensile strength of tentacles is a different thing from pulling strength.
True. It's not like an actual like muscular pull, because it doesn't necessarily win that tug of war. And again, the fire spray is facing down, so its main thrusters are actually above it. So we're really just relying on its ability to reverse or repulsor. So these calculations, are they perfectly exact? No. It's Star Wars. Do you need perfect science for Star Wars? No. I don't care. Lando is the strongest man in the Star Wars galaxy. All right. On that note, that is all the time we have for this episode.
Oh no, hold on. We have the entertainment value.
Oh no.
It'll be quick.
I was so ready to
real quick.
Leap out on that.
I can guarantee. Okay, so real quick though, we are changing our final metric from faithfulness and originality because we feel that is too generic and that does not explain what this number actually is.
It doesn't really help because there are some things that are technically bad that we are still going to be entertained by. That is a true thing with movies, TVs, books, etc. Where, hey, is this a technical like masterpiece of its class? No. Is it really fun? Heck yeah, you should still probably watch it even if we don't necessarily technically rate it well.
Yeah.
So we felt like we should include this in here. Sadly, as the first example of its kind, this is maybe not the best example of that potential separation of score. So we're going to kick it off. Andrew?
This is entertainment score. So I gave it a 6 out of 10. It was mildly entertaining because, the episodes 5 and 6 were really fun. I invested with Mandalorian. It's kind of hard not to be at this point if you've watched the other shows. And the final episode did have a couple good little bits in here, despite the intelligence of our main characters.
We King Konged a Rancor.
We King Konged a Rancor. That did happen. But it was a 6. It was a show.
So the real question here is, would you rewatch it? Does the 6 constitute a rewatch for you? Is it entertaining enough?
I would say anything under an 8 is probably not worth a rewatch from me.
Okay, you need high levels of entertainment.
Yes.
That's fair. It doesn't have to be good. It just has to be entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Joel?
I gave it a 4. It was not that entertaining. I feel like if like, unless you just really love the character of Boba Fett from previous material and you really want to watch, you want to consume as much Boba Fett material as you possibly can because you love it. If that is not you, just skip the first 4 episodes.
Yeah, and just watch the last 3 and you're not going to miss anything.
Yeah. So not worth it.
So obviously no rewatch in your future.
Not at all.
No. All right. I also gave it a 4, and I would agree with all of those points. Do you need a filler piece before Mandalorian season 3? Episodes 5, 6, and 7 are there for you. Do you need anything before that? You sure don't. Not unless you want to see what are all these memes about. Because then you can go find out what the angsty Skittles are up to.
Yep.
You didn't use I've avoided that line so hard because I was trying to let you have it, and you didn't take it.
The angsty Skittles. The Mod Squad.
Angsty Skittles.
Yeah.
I mean, but now I'm just waiting for someone to make art of Lando with just massive bicep, just holding on to the skiff.
Well, I mean, it's just the Captain America scene where
he's holding on to the
Winter Soldier, where he's holding on to the helicopter, except it's Lando, and he's holding on to Slave One with one arm, and Cloud City with the other.
Alrighty, everyone. So on that note, that is all the time we have for this episode. Until next time, I'm Steven.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Joel.
And every spoiler was intended. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, you can support the show for as low as $1 at patreon.com/spoilersintendedpodcast. We also have a Discord server and would love to have more people joining in the conversation. Links are in the description below. Thank you.